How's it going, guys? My name is Zach with the Movie Castle, and today we're going to be talking about The Creeps issue number 30 from June 2021. For those of you guys who don't know about the magazine, this is an anthology horror comic magazine. Inside you'll find 6 black and white short horror stories, and they're all really fun. And they also tend to focus a lot on the classic monsters. Not every single story, but you do in each issue, you're pretty sure you're going to get some werewolves or mummies or vampires. And as shown on the cover of this, a werewolf there. So that's pretty cool. And I really do like this cover. We take a closer look at it, and you can see the detail on this moon, all these little craters, and then the wolfman's face. You also do get a good sense of color, this nice orange with this really good green, and the green pops really well with the orange Creeps logo. You also get to see movement as it's tearing its shirt off and its transformation, and plus it's a really cool werewolf. And yeah, that's really great. And overall I really like this this cover here of the werewolf in front of the full moon. Really nice classic cover. Flip it open, and on the back of the cover you get the old Creeps historic horrors, and this time he's talking about ogres, the deep dark old-timey version of ogres, where they're like people but they're bigger and usually have bigger heads, and they're known for eating people, so they're cannibalistic there, which is pretty cool and dark. And then it talks about how the Cyclops from the Odyssey was actually a really big one-eyed ogre that wanted to eat them all. So that's pretty fun to look at this old legendary stuff there. Always cool for the old Creep to tell us about some classic monsters. Anyway, the next page, credit where credit is due. If you want to pause here, you can read all the credits to this magazine, see who did the stuff. And then below that, the table of contents. We have the Dear Old Creep, which is the letters page. A Baby Tramp, which is the classic horror. The Baseball Gods, Once in a Full Moon. Wear a Mask, The Mummy's Wrath. The Creeps Fan Club. And then the Space Vampire. And on the sides here you can see little previews of what the stories are going to be, which is a really nice touch. You know, a little taste of the magazine early. But now after this we're gonna go in and we're gonna take a look at some of the stories. And before I go in, I just want to say, don't worry, I'm not going to be doing any major spoilers. I do want to say my piece on a few plot points, and I want to make sure you guys have a basic understanding as to what these stories are about, but no major spoilers. And that being said, let's jump in. But before the stories, we actually have the Dear Old Creeps letter page, and this is where people send in really nice stuff talking about the magazine. But I do want to draw your attention to this guy here. He is Christian Howard, and in one of my previous reviews talking about the magazine, Christian Howard actually left me a really nice comment and told me that he was going to be in here. So, hey Christian, good to see you. And there's his picture, and behind him you see he's got framed copies of the Creeps magazine, so that is pretty cool and a nice display. But keep him in mind. He'll be coming up again later in this magazine. Anyway, flipping along to the A Baby Tramp. This is the Old Creep's classic horrors. In each magazine, the Old Creep talks about a classic horror story. In this case, it's from Ambrose Bryce in 1891, so a long time ago. And it talks about how there's this kid standing by the graveyard, and when the rain hits him, it appears to turn into like goo, and he's looking at the graves. But how did he get here, and what's up with him? Well, you see, he's in a town called Blackburg where strange things happen. There is a rain of frogs, and then a rain of blood, and then after that, quite sadly for the town, about half the people of the town died in a great big old plague there, and some left and came back, but then it's like, oh, we got to mention the Ghost of Hedy, and basically Hedy was from the Brownon family, the city's most rich and respectable family, and she of course grows up and gets married and has the kid from the beginning, but of course tragedy is going to strike in the form of that plague from earlier, and that leaves the kid alone, and from there you get to find out about the kid, his life, and what exactly leads him to the graveyard, what's he doing there. And it's a pretty fun, dark story. A big takeaway from the story is just how bad life used to be, when you're dealing with, plagues and stuff, and how people had to get really tough back then because you never know, everyone you loved might just up and die. So really dark in that way. And then the ending, I won't spoil it for you, obviously, but when you find out what the kid's trying to do, you're like, oh, that is dark. It's a really, really nice dark twist ending there. Moving right along to the baseball gods. It talks about how this team, the Pagans, are having a particularly rough opening day. You see one of the baseball players swings his bat at a ball, and the bat cracks, and the wood from the cracked bat actually flies off and slices this guy in the throat. So a good dark opening for those of you who are worried this is just going to be a sports story. And the manager of the team, you see, even though they did bad, they had a rookie that did pretty well, and he talks to this rookie and he's like, hey, what do you know of the baseball gods? And it's a good way, because there's tons of superstition surrounding sports, but it's a good way to, mix a sports story and a magic story. And of course he's skeptical, and they're like, no, this game, it's all about luck, any little inch you can get, and you really do need that, and it makes all the difference. But of course he doesn't necessarily believe that. And of course the creep style deep dark ending, and it really does blend the sports genre and the magic genre together pretty well. Anyway, up next, once in a full moon, you get the werewolf from the cover there. This is the panel in the story, and a group of people is hunting this werewolf who just attacked this lady. And here in the bottom corner, you can see the group that shot at him. You get this guy over here who looks like Peter Cushing right there. But take a look at this guy. You remember Christian Howard from the Letters page? They actually drew this guy to look like him. So I thought that was pretty cool that they took one of their fans and stuck him in the comic. I like to see the interactivity between the fans and the comic makers. And hey, if you ever need a dumb nerd to get killed in any of your comics, feel free to draw me in there. I don't care. But yeah, cool to see Christian in this. Back to the story, and there's a better shot of Peter Cushing there. But they take her into the church, and they talk about how, the doctor's out of town, and the doctor's actually her fiancé, and they're worried she might die, but even if she lives, she's destined to become another werewolf. And a good classic werewolf story, and when you find out a few things later on, it does have a pretty good take on it that you haven't really seen before. Anyway, moving right along to a very topical story called Wear a Mask. And it talks about how years after our current pandemic, a meteorite lands and creates a new pandemic which dissolves people to their bones. So, yeah, that got worse, huh? But anyway, there are these scientists trying to find a cure, and they got their test monkey in the background, a little chimpanzee. They got his blood from it, and the monkey gets really angry and knocks the vial of his blood out of the guy's hand, and now you have this infected mask covered in this monkey's blood, and they're like, ew, that's really gross. His lab assistant, who he hired, keeps pushing away his romantic advances, and you find out later that she's up to her own schemes. You see, the guy's finally come up with the cure, and he wants to just donate it to the government so that everybody can be cured and this can all be over and everybody will be free. And she's like, oh, that's bad. I want to make some money off of it. And she's got her secret boyfriend, Hank, and they're going to hatch up a plan. Very classic, like Tales from the Crypt style story, where it's like, haha, I'm going to scheme and I'm going to get all the money. And it ends with a very good classic Tales from the Crypt style ending, where you see one of the final panels and you're like, oh man, that got deep and dark. And admittedly, talking a lot about mask in this issue, and it's a plague and stuff, even though it's a different plague, it is pretty topical. Now, some people, whenever they talk about modern topical things, they can find it a little cheesy, but I do feel like it's really fun, and, people need to contextualize these crazy things that are happening in real life. And overall, I found it cool to, see things that are happening, not exactly, obviously, it is a different plague, but see things that are happening around you in a comic is a great way to compartmentalize. So I thought that was really fun and really classic, like something Tales from the Crypt might have done if they were around nowadays. Anyway, up next, The Mummy's Wrath, and you see some bandits, burglars, breaking into a museum, and they want to steal this ankh from around a mummy, but you see that's super precious and important, and taking it awakens the mummy. But you see, it's his job to defend this thing. You get a flashback where you see that the mummy was once upon a time the pharaoh's bodyguard, and he was willing to be killed to go into the afterlife to protect his pharaoh. So he becomes the mummy then, and of course he is going after this ankh that they stole from him, and it leads to this big standoff with the police. So cool, almost action movie starring the mummy. You get him there throwing the knife at this guy, and I'm a little farther into the story than I normally go, but I do have to show you a panel on the next page. I'll keep the frame tight, but there's the mummy holding a gun, and he's like, this is different than what I'm used to, but I can figure out what it does. I'm used to figuring out weapons from different times because he's been woken up every now and then. But overall, a really cool mummy standoff movie, or story rather. Very fun, action styled, but with a classic horror character brought into modern action. That's pretty cool. Up next, we get the Creeps fan club, and we get this creepy image titled Apocalypse, a giant head above a burning city. And you get two stories this time around, two prose stories. Don't Forget the Jars of Honey from K.R. Pert, where there's a mysterious creature that ate all their livestock except for one sheep that was still bloodied and torn up and stuff. And the father tells his son to put crosses and jars of honey all around their farm, but the son, of course, doesn't really want to listen to that. And then up next, we have Kaiju of Aogakara? I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. I'm not familiar with the city. But this is from Christian Howard. Remember the guy from the letters page and who appeared in the werewolf story? He also has this nice prose story in the back of the magazine, and it's about a city with a suicide forest, so pretty dark and creepy right there. But it talks about how not all of the deaths were the people's will, but the will of this giant creepy monster, a kaiju hidden in the forest and manipulating people. And do the townsfolk know about it, and what are they doing? So a pretty cool, dark story there. And then flipping on to the last story in the magazine, again, I can't believe we're at the end already. I say that at the end of every issue, but the space vampire, you get this good kid named Archie, an all-American vampire, and he looks up at the sky, and a spaceship crashes to the ground. Out of the spaceship comes this guy who briefly transforms into a bat, leaving Archie to go, "Oh, you're like me." And he's like, "Oh, yes, I'm a vampire, but I'm from this far-off world." And he gives the kid a second bite and makes him an even more powerful vampire. And you get to find out about his home world and the war the vampires rage there, and you begin to wonder what his plans are for Earth. So a pretty fun, kind of like those old 1950s movies where a vampire comes down from outer space and makes deals with the humans and stuff. Of course, in this one, he's making a deal with an Earth vampire, and that is a pretty cool take on it, and a pretty cool ending as well. And I forgot to mention it when we started the story, but there's the dear old creep in his spacesuit, which very fun, nice, retro sci-fi, him in his spacesuit there. So very, very cool. I do love that they always put the creep into the story in a fun way. But anyway, that's the end of the Creeps number 30. Really blew by fast. I guess, time flies when you're having fun. I really just, tore into these stories and read them pretty much straight through. Almost. I had to get distracted by real life every now and then again. But really, really fun issue, and the Creeps is staying on par. The Creeps, ever since I bought it, has always stayed consistent and just really, really good horror stories. I love their attention to the classics, be it the classic monsters or the old Creeps classic horror, and it's just really fun to see a modern take on the old-timey anthology comics, and they're all really fun, creepy stories with good dark twist, and the Creeps in issue 30 is staying consistently good, and if you're fans of the magazine, definitely keep picking it up. This one is really good as well, and I'm looking forward to issue number 31, but until that gets here, there is Vampirus Carmilla number 3, which should be coming out pretty soon, and I'm looking forward to that. Vampirus Carmilla is another magazine by the same guys, more short horror stories, and if you're picking this up, I definitely recommend picking that up as well. Anyway, to everyone who's watched so far, thank you for watching. To everyone who's liked and subscribed, thank you. You're really helping the channel out. I'll put a relevant playlist on the bottom. If